So today I've brought you to Meadowlands Fishery to do a silverfish only live match. We've had a fantastic day, we've caught loads of fish, a little bit different from the norm. It's a venue I've had a lot of success with, won a few festivals in here and stuff, fishing with pellets. But today's been a little bit different, caught some funky species, but let me tell you, I've had a fantastic match. Right, we're just getting ready for the start of the match. There's the all-in. Running a touch late, so what I'm going to do, I'll feed this short line. Normally I put ground bait in on this line, but I come last week and it took me an hour to catch 2 perch. So let me grab my chop worm scissors. I'm going to fish it ever so slightly different this week and chop a few worms up, because hopefully there's some perch to be caught this first hour. Now, you could easily not get a bite on here for an hour. Most of the times I've been here, that's exactly what it's been like. You don't get a bite for an hour, and then they arrive and you start catching some skimmers, hopefully on long pole. So I'm going to go down a pellet route on the long pole. Again, it could take an hour, it could take 3 hours to get a bite, but hopefully that's the best thing to do. It's towing quite hard today, so what I'm going to do, make a little mix here of some worms and casters. I'm not going to put any ground bait in on this line, like I say, because last week I felt like the fish I was targeting were not really ground bait type of fish. So I'm potting on this short line 100mm of casters and chopped worms. Hey up, got my short number 3 up there, I don't want that. The casters and worms, and I'm going to cup it. I want to fish roughly where that white tape is on my pole, but it's sloping away, so I'm going to cup it slightly shorter. Got a little marker on far bank there. I'm just going to pot it in one little hole. I've plumbed down my peg as well, and I've made sure that I'm not coming off the bottom. It's very important when you basically start your match. So I'm going to feed on this long pole about 75mm of micros. It's very important when you're plumbing at the start of the match to check the toe. The toe today is going from right to left, so it's backing up. What that means is that the wind's going to the right, it's actually pulling the opposite way, which is good because the right hand side of my peg actually slopes away and goes a bit deeper. So just get this section on. Make sure I didn't spill them pellets. Now I'm going to be fishing in a front rest, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to empty my pellets just ever so slightly back, like 6" plus the 6" that I'm compensating for when I put it in my front rest. I'm going to spread them over a big area, so like a 2-foot dinner plate, a few slightly to the right of where I want to fish, because they're probably going to tow and end up about 2 foot down my peg. If the wind gets worse, could end up even further down my peg. So start on this short line. And like I say, if I don't get a bite here, some people would fish the feeder in this situation. And if you fish the feeder, yes, you might get off to an early start, but you could compromise your long pole line. The further I chuck out, the less chance I've got of catching the skimmers anyway. Most of the skimmers are probably sat on that 25-30 metre line. I might chuck out on the feeder, I might get a couple of quick fish, but then they might take longer to come onto my pole line. So my plan here, obviously, is to try and win. I want to try and make that pole line work. That's how I caught last week. I had 42 pound last week before it went cold, and what happened was I never had a fish for 50 minutes, and then I caught 2 perch, and then I dropped on my long pole, and then I caught nice and steady then. So that's the plan. So I'm just going to sort my bait out now. Get rid of them scissors. let's just organise this tray a little bit. Now I've got ground bait mixed up behind me, and if I need that ground bait, say I don't catch any perch early doors, so I just want a few maggots for the hook. I'm not actually going to feed any maggots. So I'm going to start. I'll start on double maggot just because it's a bit more visual rather than just going on single. I'm just going to trickle casts in over the top, so make sure you flick it beyond that shelf. Let that rig catch up. In fact, I'm going to have 10 minutes where I'm just not loose feeding, so it's towing quite hard. That rig had pretty much caught up straight away then, so I've potted my bait here on my joint. I can ship all the way out to here and I'm still on the bottom. So when I'm plumbed up here on my joint, I'm probably about 5 inch over depth, and that just compensates for the little bit of a slope. We'll just see. Don't want anything in my way. I'm striking. We'll just see if we get a bite. All the time I'll be looking around, just seeing what people are doing. Just see if someone gets a bite. It's pulling really hard. I don't like this when it's pellet fishing. So it's riding up a little bit there. This is where you have a nightmare. If the bottom's not nice, you have a nightmare because it's pulling through, and basically my peg here is going deeper to the right and shallower and up to the left. The next peg along is where it jumps up a little bit, and that's where you get what we call the depth change on these deeps. This is like peg 20 is like the start of the deeps, and these 5 or 6 pegs are the deepest pegs on the lake. That's why they can be really good for skimmers. So like I say, I'm not expecting a great deal to happen this first hour. The match will be won and lost on that long pole. Not going to win it on this short line, I don't think. There's not been lots of skimmers getting caught on this short line, so I'm not expecting lots of skimmers here. But if there's no perch and there's no roach to be caught, a lot of the roach have been on the pump bank, which is a little bit shallower. When I was here last week, there's hardly any roach whatsoever. I've never fished like this, to be honest, with just worms and casters, but after last week and seeing the fish that got caught, like hybrids and perch, I just felt like I wish I hadn't put that ground bait in, so if it doesn't work today, I can always introduce some ground bait. But I put it in last week and it was like, didn't really do anything for the peg, so hopefully just feeding neat worms and casters. I'll just start off and run my rig through, see if anything comes in. If it doesn't, I'll just start trickling like 10 or 15 casters over it and hopefully try and drag a few fish that way. And then this line probably will produce a few bites towards the end of the match. But if you're catching skimmers long, which hopefully that'll be the plan, if we can catch them skimmers long, then hopefully like this short line I can sort of be positive with it and start filling it in with ground bait and trying to attract some skimmers as well, because we've got a nice depth there. It's pulling really, really hard. Like I've got a gram rig on short here, it's probably 8 foot of water. Last time I come last week I fished a 0.75 short and a gram long, and that was perfect. Today I'm fishing a gram and a half long, and I think the lad next to me's got a fish. Carp, that's not a good sign. I'm fishing a gram and a half long and a gram short, and even they're pulling, you know, they're tanking through. I'm having to really hold back against that float. And again, that's where fishing a little bit more over depth helps. Don't try and, there we go. Don't try and fish too nice and if you fish too nice, try and be too dead depth and all the rest of it, it's no good. So little hybrid, that's a great start to get a bite that quick. Not even started to loose feed yet. Again, we'll do the same again, double maggot. Just got old 10, 18's F1 maggot hook on. A gram skimmer carbon float. Gram skimmer carbon float, and then I've just got a bulk and free droppers, old 13 engage main line to an old 10 hook length. So all I'm looking for here really is just if I could catch £2, £3 like in that first hour. There's another bite. £2, £3 in that first hour. That's mega, do you know what I mean? I think this might be a perch, the way it's fighting, yep. And that's what I was saying about last week. I put that ground bait in. I never caught this, well I didn't catch anything for 50 minutes. And I looked at the fish that was caught in the first hour, and there were these perch. And there's a lot of perch in this venue, to be fair, and some little hybrids, but not many roach and not many skimmers, which told me like it was pointless putting ground bait in. So I'm glad that's worked, because that was sort of like my gut feeling last week. You know, and even if we don't catch, I've already got more than what I caught last week at this stage in the match, and I caught £42 last week. So it's not like I wasn't on fish, I just feel like I fed my peg wrong. So now I'm just gonna, now I'm starting to get a few bites, keep a bit of bait trickling through. Now we can start getting bites here before we have to go on that long line. That'd be mega. So Daniel just took right at me, he just started on feeder, he's had a little skimmer. These are all good signs though, because when this venue's hard, you generally don't get bites, you just don't catch early, and when it's good you catch sooner. So if we can catch early doors, you know, that's a mega sign. Normally takes a good 50 minutes an hour to get a bite long, so I'm not expecting anything long for at least 50 minutes an hour. Anything I can catch here now is just great. It's really pulling there, so I'm gonna follow it through for now. Just let it inch through and just see what happens. Probably a good 2 foot down my peg there already. And when it starts to shallow up there, that was the bottom. So I'll just chuck it back out to the right. Nice if this wind turns and the tow just eases off a little bit. It's just easier to find where the fish are when it's not pulling so hard. Again, I'm just going to loose feed some casters right on my mark, and they'll probably end up, the way that's pulling, they could end up 2 to 3 foot down my peg. let that really run down the peg there then. That was probably a good 4 foot down the peg. That's why it's so important to plumb your peg properly at the start and plumb right down your peg. Because you might end up letting your rig go. And what happens is you let your rig go and you're actually off the bottom, which is no use. So you're sort of taking an average. My average today is to fish like 5 inch over depth, and that pretty much covers everything. But they're like the fish we're looking to catch. If we can catch them, it's probably 8 ounce. Now they love casters, so I'm going to slip a caster on. That was on double maggot. Slip a caster on and see what happens. I'm going to bury my caster as well. I'm going to get to my mark, chuck my rig straight out in front of me. So as it's settling, by the time it's settled up, it'll be coming back in beyond my pole tip. I'll try chucking it against the toe in a bit. A little bit far with loose feet there. We'll try chucking it against the toe so it's coming back, and that'll slow the fall of the rig down. If I chuck it in left to right, or right to left, sorry, the toe's going that way, so your rig's trying to push against the toe. So flicking it in against the toe will slow the fall down. Sometimes that's really good. But at the minute I'm just trying to work out where my bites are, where the fish are, how far down the peg they are. So again, I'm just letting this go a little bit. I reckon I'm 3 foot down peg there. If it was pulling that way, if it was going with the wind, it'd be a nightmare today because it's going deeper. I'd have to start well over depth and compensate for it going deeper. But because it's pulling this way, it's actually running into the shelf. It's actually a better way for it to be towing. So there now, I am miles down my peg. I reckon 6 foot down my peg. Dan's just had another one on the feeder there. I'm probably too far down my peg there, so chuck this rig in. This time I'm going to try and hold it on my bait and sort of edge it through slowly. Just get my eye in with that catty. So this time I'm going to hold it like I will be doing on my long line. On my long line I'll be using a front rest to try and stabilise that rig, because otherwise it'll drift through. When you're holding onto it with your hands, without knowing it, you're naturally just letting it drift through. So here now I'm trying to hold it back, and then what I can do is just let it run through another couple of inch. Just try and hold it back in that spot. Obviously when you're getting plenty of bites, it's a lot easier and quicker to find where the fish are. Again, I'm just letting it edge through. I'm looking at markers on the far bank, so like I've got my pallet on the far bank as my marker. Now I'm sort of in line with a bunch of trees on the far bank. This is where a lot of my bites have been coming, sort of towards the end of the trees, if you like. Again, just edged it through. I just had a little indication there, so just on the edge of the tree. So again, I'm going to flick this in this time and just let it pull to that spot quick, and then hold it on that spot, which I reckon is about 2.5, 3 foot down my peg. So you see how hard it pulls, and obviously the deeper it is, the longer it's going to take for your bait to fall. It can move a lot further. It was only 3 foot deep. You know, your bait probably won't be 3 foot down your peg. There we go. Your bait probably won't be 3 foot down your peg, but because it's 7, 8 foot deep there, you've got a lot of time to move down your peg and end up a lot further away. caught one on that eventually. I'll go back to that little spot. This time I'm going to pick out like a goldeny caster. You know, perch definitely like slightly lighter coloured casters. And that's predominantly what we're fishing for here, is then perch. So now I've had a bite there, I'm going to chuck it. In fact, no, I'm going to do the same as what I did. And then I'll have a chuck. I'll have a chuck with it against the toe. So I'm still going to loose feed in the same spot. So in line with that pallet on the far bank. Yeah, I had an indication straight away. So that's pretty obvious where my bait's ending up. Is in line with the edge of them trees, because the 4 fish I've had have all come in that tree area. So next chuck, what I'll do is I'll just flick it against the toe and just see if I get a bite on the settle. Because this way, my rig's trying to fall in, it's towing that way, it's getting my rig down a lot quicker. I'll flick it in against the toe. It'll fall a bit slower and obviously give them a little bit more time to see it. And this is where, like, when it's towing really hard like this, you can't really fish little fancy light rigs. You know, your rig's got to work for a start. It can't just be tramming through unnatural. So even though a gram sounds like ridiculously heavy, when I put my 0.75 on, you couldn't hold on to it. It was just tramming through too heavy. Dan's had another little skimmer there, which is a good sign, because them little, what I'm most happy about there is he's catching them little 6-8 ounce skimmers. And that's what we want to be catching on the pellet in a bit. So this time now I'm going to flip my rig against the toe. So this is the first time I've done this. I've not had a bite on the settle yet. I had one little indication, so it'll be interesting to see if this goes just as the bait hits the bottom. It's going to take a lot longer to fall through. There we go, a little sign. It's amazing how you can just change the direction of which you flick your rig in, especially when it's towing, and all of a sudden you start getting bites miles quicker from it. I've seen a little fish top at like 20 metres, that's good. I think we might catch a few today. It's a bit dubious this morning because obviously we've had a lot of rain and wind, but it's probably done us a good favour. Like last week when we come, a week ago it was snowing and it was just freezing cold, just knew it was going to be hard work. And I think £22 won the match that day, so it still fished okay, to be fair. But this venue's got potential for 40, 50, 60 pounds, 70 pound bags of skimmers when it's on. Normally after Christmas is a better time for it. I'm going to let it run through a little bit. I'm not going to bite that time. Let's flick it back out again. Keep a little stream of casters going through. The wind's just starting to, the wind is forecast to go off us back today. So, yeah, Dan's got another one. So there's 4 little skimmers there. Right, I'm going to try flicking it the other way and just dragging it through along the bottom. So you're already 25 minutes in, probably got 1.5 pounds, but we've only got another sort of half an hour, 40 minutes, and we'll be having a look on that long pole line. So if you try and do too much, you know, start on a feeder and come on the short pole, like some days you'll go in here, you catch 6 or 8 pound in first hour. You know, you get a few, especially when it's fishing a little bit better. The harder it fishes, obviously the more the fish will stay out, but I've caught 4 fish on this and I'm actually quite happy with that, as daft as it sounds. Right, so we just had a couple of little roach, which is a good sign, but it's just started pulling that little bit harder. So what I've had to do is just put a couple of trimming shot on it, just put like 2 number 13s on, just to keep my float from riding up. So my float now is dotted to a pimple or very slightly overshotted, and all I'm doing, the best thing, is to chuck it out in front of me, just hold it back, let it fall to the bottom, and then as it trims up there I can see my float. I've got it painted red and black, and then I'll start just edging it through. Now before, the tow seems to have got worse the last 20 minutes or so. My float was riding up, because even though it's shotted correctly, you're pulling back and your float's riding up. So just by adding a little couple of extra shot, now I can just edge that float through the peg, and I'm actually seeing the bites, whereas before my float was sitting up a little bit too high, I weren't seeing the bites. So the last couple of run throughs I've had a couple of bites. You know, it's not brilliant here yet, but your presentation has got to be right, otherwise you just won't catch them. So again, I'm just edging it through. Anywhere around there has been where I've getting my bites. Probably had 5 or 6 perch now. That one little hybrid, 2 roach. I'm just going to lean forward, just let it go that last little bit, right at the edge of the trees now. Anything past that I've not really had a bite, so they're from sort of like my feed to probably about 4 foot down my peg. Again, I'm just going to chuck that rig out. As it's straightening up, now's my time where I can just fire a few casters in. So loose feed some casters straight in front of me on my marker. Let it all straighten up. So I'll just hold it back pretty hard until it gets to the bottom. Once I see that last dropper kicking on my float, like there now, I can just start edging it through and following it. And now my float's not riding up. Like I say, I've just them 2 extra tiny little 13 shots just made all the difference. Now I've not got like 3/4 of a bristle showing. Is that a bite? Don't think so. Yeah, that's the bottom. This is what you pick up a lot when you're fishing on the bottom. Little bits of weed and stuff like that. I'm just going to go back to maggot, because the 2 roach I caught I did catch on caster. I hardly caught a roach last week, so it's a good sign that we've had 2 already, because later in the day they might have a little feed and we might be able to, hopefully, if we can catch on that pellet line, fingers crossed we do, if we can catch on that pellet line, then we've hopefully got somewhere to drop back on if we want to rest it. 43 minutes into the match now, so I reckon another 15-20 minutes it'll be time to go long and have a look. What I don't want to do is go in there too eager, just because other people are catching a few around me. You know, Dan on next pegs had probably 6 or 7 skimmers on the feeder. I don't want to panic and think to myself, oh no, he's catching, I need to get out there on the feed, on the pole. Like, hopefully if I leave them and they settle, I'll catch for longer. The worst thing you can do sometimes is go out there before they arrive, catch the first one that comes in your peg, and then they never sort of settle. I'm looking down there, I've seen Sean Smart have a couple on the long pole, but I don't know if he's fishing pellets or not. He's not got a pot on his pole, so maybe he's fishing ground bait and maggots, and they might be roach and perch that he's catching, but at least this fish coming within range, you know what I mean? You know, like, a little indication maybe. At least this fish coming in within range, because I've started off and caught on this line fairly quickly. I can't really fish any closer than this because it's too shallow. It jumps up really quick, so I've just gone over the first ledge, and then on my pellet line long, to find a nicer flatter bit, I've had to go out to 14, whereas last week on the festival I drew peg 15. I'm on 18 today, so 3 pegs down. It plumbed up absolutely lovely, really nice, flat as a pancake. It was perfect. So if you drew that peg today, even if it was towing, it was just like a snooker table. This peg would be absolutely fine if it weren't pulling, because you could just fish in one little area the size of a dinner plate and concentrate the fish. So I'm just going to flick it against the toe this time and see what happens. A lot of people now would be thinking, oh, I'm not getting enough bites, I need to get out, I need to do something else. But like I say, it's all about this venue is waiting for them fish to arrive, and then normally your match doesn't really start until an hour in, and then you can start to assess what's happening and whether I need to put a bit of ground bait on this. Like I had a few perch at the start. Do I need to feed some more worms here maybe? That's a possibility. You know, I only fed a little pinch of worms and some casters to start off with, probably 100mm of bait. They might have ate most of them now, because I've not had a chunky perch for a bit. See, this time I don't feel like I've flicked my bulk far enough past the shelf. The float's sitting up a little bit, so make sure you get it way past that shelf. Otherwise you'll end up with too much line on the bottom, and then your float can start riding up again. We're an hour and 15 into the match, and we've had some bites on this. It's been miles better than I thought it'd be. Probably got like 4.5 pound, just odd roach, mainly perch. I'm happy that I didn't put any ground bait in, because we've had bites and it's not like it's not worked. We've managed to catch some perch. It went a little bit slow and I didn't catch a perch for a while, so I just put a tiny little bit more chopped worm in, probably only like 10 or 15 worms, chopped them in and got another little run of perch, and then tried upping my feed a little bit with the casters. Didn't really make much difference. Had a few perch on the drop on the settle, so I feel like there's some fish there now. At the start of the session, if you remember me saying, I was catching on the left hand side, the end of the trees. Now I'm sort of catching on the right hand side of the trees, which is probably only like 18 inches, 2 foot down my peg. Whether the toe's just starting to ease off now as the wind's turning, or whether the fish are just coming up a bit closer to the bait, I'm not too sure, but we're starting to get a few more signs. But it is also time to go and have a look on that pellet line and see what's happening. You know, see if there's any fish out there. Because if we can catch a slightly better stamp of fish, try and get a few of them skimmers going, that's where we're going to do our better weight. But this has been a great starting line. Let's see there, I'm probably 6 inch past my bait. I'm just letting it run, and most of my bites have been coming over this next sort of 6 inch area. Again, just letting my bait sort of trip through. Had a few on casters now. A little indication then. Could have been roach or something then. The best thing to do is just flip my rig out in front of me now. Just let it catch up and then just edge it through. Sometimes just as that rig's hit the bottom, you'll get a bite. So like you can see there, just got a little bit of float showing, red bristle, and then that's when my last dropper's just kicking in now. caught quite a lot of perch like there. Just as it's settled, it's gone. I'm not letting it run too far down my peg now, because when I've let it run, I've not really had any bites. Another little indication then. So even though I'm catching on this now, I'm just going to go and have a look, see what happens on this pellet line, because I can just keep loose feeding this and hopefully gather a few more fish. But fingers crossed I can drop on this line. These perch won't last forever, and you can see the chunky fish, 6 ounce. They won't last forever, them perch, but hopefully as they fade, more roach will start coming into play. So what I'm going to do, get the little tiny guru pot. It's quite deep out here. Probably have to net these on the top 5 when we've got the elastic out on that. So what I found best was last week's. I've sort of pole pot about 4 inches back. Fill that pot to the brim almost. Got a little 16s F1 pellet on. Don't feel like you need to fish any lighter or smaller. 0.10 to a 16s F1 pellet's just nice. If you start fishing too smaller hooks in this depth of water, you end up striking your bait off. So like that short line, I feel like I know where the fish are. I feel like I can just keep loose feeding casters there. Just need to work out now what's happening on this long line. So I'm gonna chuck my rig out similar, just past where I'm fishing, look at my marker, and I'll sprinkle my pellets over a nice big area, and then I'm going to stick it in my front rest, and then while I'm waiting for that to trim up, I can just loose feed that short line. Again, it's pulling quite hard. I might have to actually take a shot off that. Float's really low there. Hopefully I'll just be able to feed it, find where the fish are, just try and keep it still on that mark. So much easier to catch them on pellets when it's not towing, but doesn't mean to say that you can't catch them on pellets. Just got to fish a little bit more over depth. Again, I'm looking where I've fed. I'm quite a way down my peg here. Probably a good 2 foot down my peg. Like I say, at least it's backing up the right way, it's backing up right to left. If it was going with the wind, left to right, by the time I got down my peg 2 foot, I'd be off the bottom. It'd be a little bit awkward. At least here, I've got the same amount of line on the bottom as it's pulling that way. I've got 1.5 grams out there, it's pulling really bad. Letting it edge through. Probably gone a little bit too far, so I'm gonna reach up that rigging. Again, as it's trimming up, that's a good time to feed. dotted my float a bit too low here because I can't hold on to it, and I can hold on to it a little bit there. If the wind's bad, it just makes it awkward. When you're fishing short poles, you can hold on to it and just sort of edge it through. Out there it's a lot harder. It's why you need one of these bump bars. That's fishing all right there now. I'm sure that was a bite. Again, just chuck that rig back in. So that bite then, I've fed in line with one pallet, ever so slightly to my right. That one probably come a foot down the peg from where I fed. This is why it's a good idea to sprinkle your micros over a big area so you've got a bigger margin of error. I just clumped them in one little spot. I'd only have a tiny little pile. This just makes me peg that a little bit bigger. Means the fish can graze over a bigger area. A little sign maybe. So I'm trying to hold it where I think I had a bite then, which is in line with the next lot of steps on the far bank. Sometimes what happens with this is you feed and the skimmers do back off your pellets for a little while, and then as soon as you catch one you seem to get another, and then you get a little run of them, then they disappear, you feed and you're repeating the process. So it's a case of working out how much do you need to feed, because the more you feed the longer it'll take for you to get a bite, but your run of fish could be bigger. And near enough every time I've been on here, it's been ever so slightly different. Because it's towing today, it could be different from last week, so the way I'm feeding it today might not be right. Might have to change it up in a bit, maybe feed little balls of pellets. Maybe feed a little bit heavier and try and fish it out a little bit more. I was expecting to have had one by now. Normally if they're out there after this amount of time, they'd be on your bait and it'd go under. I'll give it like an hour and 15 minutes, which should be plenty enough time for them to arrive if they're going to arrive. I've seen other people catch up long pole, but I don't know if they're fishing pellets or not. So again, just keep loose feeding them casters. I'm not sure if that was a bite or not. I think my float's just a little bit too low for this. Dotted it down to a pimple, but it's was that a bite or not? I'm not sure. There we go. This is first bite. I'm going to try breaking off on the top 5. Let's see where this gets us. A bit too deep for a top 4. They're like your bread and butter fish, little sort of 5-ounce skimmers. Right, I'm just gonna take a shot off this. I'm going to change. A little kicker shot for me. 10 to an 11. Just so I can read my bites a little bit better. In this depth of water, sometimes you have to have your float really low, but then, you know, if you can't see it, What's the point? Maybe just have a little bit more bristle showing. I'm not going to feed again this time. I'll do the same again, just chuck that rig out. Stick it in that front rest. Let it all catch up. And as it's catching up, keep that short line fed. And then now I can get my pole to the right hand side, because it's going to tow right to left. I can see me float nice there now. Is that a bite? Could have been. So my last bite come about a foot down the peg, 18 inches maybe. Just trying to hold it there, maybe edge it through a little bit, but try and keep it still if I can, just over that little spot. Let's just see if we can get another bite there. Little indication maybe. Is that a lift? Maybe. Pellets off. So again, chuck that rig out. Because I'm fishing in that front rest, and the way I've fed at the start and the way I've got my pole 4 inches back, you can imagine I'm just on the back edge of them pellets. Keep that loose fed short line going. Don't forget about that. I think that was a bite last chuck, but at least we've had a bite. That's the most important thing. Now it's just a case of working out where I need to feed, where I need to put my rig. Do I want my pellet just tripping through, so I can just run it through a little bit like this? Don't know if that was a bite or not. I can run it through, or I can hold it still and see if that's better. So I'm just seeing there what Dan's caught. Caught a nice perch or something. See, this is the thing as well, it's picking what you want to do. Dan's catching a few on the feeder now. If he comes off it, it might be hard to get that feeder line going again. But then if the pole comes good, he'd be forced to come off it. So it's like, catch-22, what's the best method? I always feel like if you can catch them on the pole, you can cue them up a lot better. The harder days, the feeder will outscore the pole probably, when the fish don't come in range. And then when it's really, really good, you know, that short pole line, I remember fishing a festival here last year and I had 36 pound. I caught 12 pound of that 36 in the last 20 minutes short. 6 or 7 decent skimmers. Yeah, that can really change your match if they rock up short, but I don't feel like they'll do that probably till after Christmas when it starts to warm back through. As it's getting colder, the fish are probably making the way out rather than making the way in. But we've got potential that we might get an odd skimmer short later. Not fed any ground bait there. If I can keep catching perch there, they're a decent chunky size. Don't really want to put them perch off and put ground bait in and be left with nothing in my peg. I'd rather at least have somewhere I can go and get an odd bite. So it's not as good as last week. Last week I was getting bites pretty steady by now. Dropped in, fed. Probably took a similar amount of time to catch my first one. And then it was like pretty good from there on afterwards, nice and steady. Obviously a lot warmer than it is this week. We've not had the snow and everything else going and all the frost on the trot. So I'm not expecting it to be as good as last week, but hopefully they're not that far away. Cameron Hughes actually won the match last week, £46. He hardly caught anything on pellets for 3 hours. But then when they arrived, he had one a chuck and there was good stamp fish. You can soon start to build a weight up. What my dilemma is now is, do I put a bit more bait out there, or do I just leave it? I don't feel like they've ate the bait. They've definitely not ate all the bait. That looked like a bite. That's a little right, he's just had 2 fish on the trot. I'm just wondering whether I've not been looking. I'm wondering whether he's catching short or long. So I'm just trying to hold this, not as far down my peg this time. Maybe I'm going past the fish. You know, I'm fishing like 2 or 3 foot down my peg. Maybe they're closer to them pellets than you think, or maybe they're smack on top of them pellets. I wouldn't imagine my micros would fall straight down the way it's towing. I'd imagine they will be falling on some sort of an angle. Sort of like 12 foot of water. They're probably going to move a foot surely, so. I'm just going to let it go a little bit more. Try holding it like another 6-inch down peg. If I don't get one this time, I might just sprinkle a few more micros in and just see if I can attract something back, because obviously when I fed I got a bite. Normally you get a little run of them off one little feed, but if they're not fully on the bait yet, I might still need to sprinkle, keep putting a little bit of bait through just to keep attracting them. I don't want to go and feed another big volume of micros, because I just don't feel like they've ate everything. I want to feed a little bit more bait. A bit of rubbish on my line then. On my hook. I'm not going to put a lot in, literally like half the small guru pot. What's that, 20, 30 micros? Just put something through the water. It's nice when you can just fish 13 metres as well. When you start going to that 14, everything just starts getting a little bit more awkward and spread them pellets out. I'm gonna try and hold this right on top of where I fed them pellets, just see what happens. The wind stays like this, actually quite nice now. We can actually fish, we don't have to worry about the wind blowing us about. It is forecast to go off our backs later on, so maybe it's come a little bit earlier than we think. It'd be nice if we can just you know, I feel like we've got good presentation here now. So I'm just going to let this run down. I've been holding that on my bait. I'm just going to let it run down, just search my peg a little bit. Just let it go another 6 inch, just see if we get a bite further down. Probably got about 4 inch of line on the bottom here, but I might need a tidgy bit more. What I don't want is my bait sort of moving on the bottom or bouncing or anything like that. It's a bit unnatural. So maybe just putting a little bit more line on the deck. Because it's towing hard, you've got to compensate for like the arc in your rig. You think you're on the bottom. I probably will be on the bottom, but maybe I need a tidgy bit more on the deck. I might have to drop that short in a sec. Maybe they're just not quite there yet. Let it go a little bit further. I'm a good 2.5, 3 foot down the peg here now. Can't really let it go much further than it is, because then I'm going into dark water and I'll struggle to see me float. So if they are further down the peg, I might have to start feeding a little bit further to the right, just to sort of draw them up the peg a little bit. Don't think that's the case though. I've just got a feeling they're not arrived yet. Right, we're halfway through the match. I've tried that pellet line, I had that one skimmer on it. Fished that for about 30 minutes for nothing. I had a real good go on it, and I thought, they're not there yet. Tried a few different things, you know, nothing like last week. But obviously what I did learn from last week's festival when I was here is that I fed my short line wrong. I caught a few little perch, 2 perch, something like that, feeding ground bait, a few roach and an odd perch later on, and 1 skimmer feeding that ground bait. Today I knew I'd be fishing for mainly like perch, odd roach, and I chose not to feed any ground bait, and it's actually been really good. I've ended up catching a real good run of perch here now. Must have double figures now, and I think it's just a case of waiting until them skimmers arrive long. But to be honest, the fishing here is so good now, I'm almost reluctant to go out on that long line. Like, the longer I can leave it, the better, really. Like, some of the stamped perch I'm getting are anything from like 4, I'd say 3 to 6 ounce, but an odd 10, 12 ouncer. And like, the fishing's been, missed 2 bites there. Fishing's been really good. I'm catching them on casters now. Just a single caster on the hook. Double maggot's been okay, single maggot not as good. Single maggot got me an odd bite early, but casters seems to be best. And all I'm doing is just flicking my rig out past where I'm fishing, in a straight line, just letting it fall back onto that slope, loose feeding some casters, and then just as it's trimming up, they're all coming on the settle, which is typical of perch. So like you can see me float bristle, just last droppers just kicking in, bait's just getting down to the bottom about now, and then we're getting that bite just as the bait's hitting the deck. And we've had good runs like this. See, that's one of the small ones, but it's still a couple of ounce. I'm looking around, I'm not seeing, there's only one person I can't see, which is Grant Howie on the end peg up there. Grant's won a few matches here recently, so he's probably catching a few, like, but nobody's catching loads of skimmers or anything around me, so I feel like I'm happy just to keep ticking along doing this for the time being. Like I say, Cam Hughes won the match last week with £46. He didn't catch anything on pellets for 3 hours, so he says. You know, he might lie, Cameron, to be fair, but he said he didn't catch for 3 hours and then he just had a fish or chuck. I feel like that might be the case today, where they just come in later on, because when they're there, the fishing's quite simple. You know, feeding some micro pellets, fishing an expander. Probably going to go and have another look in about 20 minutes time, just to see if they're there. It might be a case that when I do catch on it, like last week I had a lot of the smaller skimmers, like 4 to 8 ounce things. And it might be a case today where when I do start catching on it, the fish might be of a better stamp, so I might not need as many fish. Maybe them smaller skimmers are not feeding in numbers. Dan had a few at the start on the feeder to my left, but he seems to have slowed up a little bit now. Whether that's a sign that they're coming in or not. But where I was catching before, like down my peg, it's not pulling as hard now. I just feel like there's more fish here. They're almost right on my bait. I would say like 6 or 8 inches to the left of my bait. But you can imagine trying to fish 14 metres out in that deep water compared to like fishing here. I've probably just caught 3 perch there for probably £1. Like good chunky sized perch, that's probably like 10 ounce that. So I probably just had £1, which I probably wouldn't have caught a skimmer in that equivalent time, so it could be a day where we just end up catching short and catching these perch. I mean, there must be millions. I know they do have good weights here. There must be millions of them down there. Obviously perch spawn sometimes this time of the year, around this time, and there could just be a big shoal of them lingering here. I mean, at times I've had it slightly better than this as well, where I've gone in, it's literally gone every chuck, and then it slows up a little bit. I've not had to feed any more worms since. I've only fed 2 tiny little bits of worms. Just loose feeding cast has been enough to keep bites coming. Had a very odd roach on it. No hybrids other than that first one we caught, first chuck, or first fish should I say. The lad up on 24, I don't know who it is, sorry, but he's getting a few smaller fish on the long pole, but I don't feel like the skimmers. I feel like the roach and perch. So if this does die off, what I'll do is I'll just put a little blob of worms in, and then it'll be a good time to go and have a look on that pellet line. Fingers crossed, not hooked to carp yet. My mate Matty Dawes were here last week. He had problems with carp short on this peg. So whether they turn up later on or not, I'm not sure, but it'd be nice if they just leave us alone and just be able to catch these perch. Because if the carp come in, they might scatter. At the moment, I feel like there's a few lingering about. It's just gone funny this last few chucks, even though I've caught like 3 fish. Just gone a little bit funny, which, you know, could be down to movement, putting the cameras back on, etc. A bit of a, I think that one's a bit on the drop. And sometimes you can be loose feeding too regular as well and bring them off the bottom without noticing. Got pink hydro elastic in here because, one, you need to set the hook in that deeper water, but also it just allows you to swing any sort of like 3-4 ounce fish. See, these, you can't swing these are like 8 ounce. Fishing's fantastic. I mean, I've done really well here in the past. I've got a decent record, to be fair, on this venue. I only come and fish the silverfish matches here, but I've had a good bit of success when I have come down here. Won a few festivals and matches and stuff, and it's all been down to pellet fishing, really, catching the skimmers or ground bait and casters short. Like, I've never actually fished like this on this venue. Like I say, when you come to venues and you see it for yourself, like last week I seen that majority of the fish on the short pole was perch, not many roach, hardly any skimmers whatsoever, and it just made sense not to put any ground bait in and just fish with like neat particles, worms and casters. And it's worked a treat for me, to be fair, up to now. I was thinking, if I didn't, you know, if they stopped and they disappeared, then perch, maybe put some ground bait in, because then you might get an odd late skimmer. These pegs are famous for catching some bream short later on in the day, but I don't know if it's like that at the minute. I feel like that's probably more after Christmassy time, and the temperature's starting to rise again rather than drop. So it's just gone a little bit funny. Just going to fish through it for now. It's not a bad time, so I'll put double maggot on, see what happens. Just been fishing a single caster there, but let's have a change of bait. Just flicking that rig out in line with the platform. Just put a little bit more bait, two lots of casters this time. Might try and catch like 2 fish off this feed if I can. Maybe just don't loose feed as regular, don't loose feed every chuck. See if we can actually keep the fish on the bottom. So once it's settled up and straightened like that, I'll just let it run a little bit. Most of the bites have been coming quite quick, to be honest. The toes definitely started to slow up a little bit as well. This morning it was pulling really hard. It might help me pellet fishing when I go out. It's still pulling, don't get me wrong, but nowhere near as much as this morning. Just letting this run a little bit further down the peg than I have been. I've had a bite by now. Most chucks, if they've been there. This one's way down the peg compared to where I've been getting the bites. Let's just reset that. So if this does slow up now, it's a perfect time to go and have another look on that pellet line. Like I say, there's odd fish come out on the long pole, but they might not fish pellets. So it's always interesting when you speak to people afterwards, like finding out what they fished. You know, because if you're coming back here during the winter months, you know, pellets, they might stop eating pellets if it goes too cold. Or it could be a case that the skimmers have not arrived yet. You know, they're further out into the lake, but when they do arrive, pellets could be better. So that's always the problem you have on here. So I'm surprised that I haven't gone under now. Most times I put double maggot on, It's not been as good as the caster because I've missed a few bites on it, but every time I've put double maggot on the hook, I've always had some signs. There's 2 little run-throughs there where I've not had a sign, so maybe it's time just to introduce a few more worms. Maybe try and regather them perch. They were never going to last all day, I don't think, anyway. You never know, they might come back. We'll get another little run if we just introduce a few more worms. Might just kickstart that peg again. I'm surprised the roach hasn't turned up by now, because, you know, looking at the time here, we've got 2 hours 10 minutes left. This last couple of hours, as the light starts to drop, hopefully we start catching some roach. I've had a couple of roach, like 4, 6 ounce, not many, literally a handful. I'm gonna go back on caster, don't like that. But we could easily start catching a few roach on this later on. If the perch disappear, the roach might turn up. And again, they love casters, so I don't feel like I need to put any ground bait in if that's the case. The thing when I put ground bait in as well is probably going to potentially attract more carp, and I don't want that. As soon as a carp comes in your peg, it's probably going to bugger off everything else in your peg. See, this is interesting because this is the worst it's been now for a while, so my peg is definitely coming to an end. I just want to make sure there's not a carp there, or before I decide to top up with a few more worms, I just want to give it a few more minutes just to confirm that I'm making the right decision. Gone from bites on the settle to literally nothing. We don't get one in the next 2 sort of chucks, 2 flickings. I'm going to just put a few more neat worms in again. I won't put any casters in with this time because I've already got lots of casters in the peg. I'm going to be loose feeding casters. I don't need to pot any casters with it. Just literally chop a few neat worms up and try and re-kickstart the peg. Probably like 50 mil of worms. Start of the match I put 100 mil of worms and casters mix, probably put 50 mil in, and then I put another 50 mil in, and that seemed to work. And then maybe just another 50 mil will do it again. Just because I've caught that one, I'm not supposed to feed it just yet. That's why I always like to give it a few minutes just to confirm, because you know, there could have been a carp mooching about and then the carp disappears. And I might drop back in now and start getting bites again, so let's see what happens this chuck. When they're there, it's been going pretty quickly. Most of the time on the settle, to be fair. See if we get a bite again this chuck. If not, if it's like, see, there I've just gone from nothing to like 2 and 2 chucks. Maybe there's a big daddy perch there and he's scared off the smaller ones. It's a nice one. So important to have that slightly heavier elastic You know, when I was fishing the festival last week, I lost 4 good perch fishing yellow hydro. Excuse me. Fishing yellow hydro, and I just feel like I didn't set the hook properly. So like by fishing pink, you might think it's a little bit heavy for silvers, but in this depth of water it's perfect. It's coming out 6 or 8 foot when I'm trying to bring these perch up. So again, another bite. So again, I'm not going to feed any worms just yet because I've just gone back in and had 3 bites and 3 chucks. So persevere doing this, and then what I'm going to do is, just over 2 hours left, I'm going to have a little look on that long pole, because I can just build this up hopefully just by loose feeding it. Don't need to feed any worms. I feel like they've come back a little bit now. Maybe it just needs a rest to regather them. I'm always dubious of feeding worms as well because it can put them off. Not so much perch, I don't think it's put these off today, but you know, too many worms, quite a potent bait. Sometimes you can feed it once or twice and then you can kill your peg a little bit when it's colder. I don't think that would be the case today, but I don't want to risk doing it just in case. Like, why risk something when you're catching a few, do you know what I mean? But I do want to see if there's any skimmers out on that long pole line, because I need to know whether this is the right thing to be doing. I mean, it's good. Could I be catching quicker? I don't think I'd be catching much quicker, if at all, to be honest, but it'd just be nice to see if there's any skimmers out there anyway. Oh, the little bugger. Another important thing as well is like making sure your hook's sharp, so I'm going to change this for a sharper hook. Perch have got really bony mouths. It's almost like once you've caught a load of them, like what happens when you foul hook a few fish, your hook point can start to go a little bit. So if you do start bumping a few, just put a new hook on. Sometimes you go through 2 or 3 hook lengths in a match just to make sure that you've got a perfectly sharp hook all the time. So I'm just going to change that hook. I'm going to have another look on this. I might have 5 more minutes on this, and then even if I'm catching, just go and have a look and see what happens with that pellet line, because I probably put like another, I don't know, 150 micros in. Not loads, but just a little bit of bait, just to try and bring something back in. And if they're going to be there, they hopefully should be there now. With like this last 2 hours, hopefully it'll start to pick up and we'll start catching some skimmers as well. And then if it's not quick, I can always come back to this line and try and work out, you know, where I'm catching the most weight. Is it quicker fishing short, catching these perch, or am I better off fishing long and catching the skimmers? Right, I'm going to go and have another look back on this pellet. I feel like if they're going to be here, they've got to be here by now. It's been good shot. It's slowing up a little bit, so I've just added a few worms. I'll keep loose feeding it. I feel like I can hopefully catch enough fish short where I don't have to worry about this going under, hopefully. You know, I can keep ticking along because the stamp of the perch are pretty good. Not many roach there. I've just had one more roach, about 6 ounce. Had a nice perch, about a pound. I just want to see if they're on this pellet line yet. The only worry is nobody's really catching skimmers on the long pole, so it might just be a day when they're just not going to feed. Whether I would have been better fishing ground bait out there, I'm not sure. That short line luckily has saved us a little bit, but because last week caught an out short and everything long, and this week's been the total opposite. But they can arrive, you know, there's still time for them to arrive. Could easily start catching on this now and maybe catch hopefully some better stamp ones when they do come, if they come. I just want to have one more look and just to see if they're there or not. Like time wise now, what have we got? Let's have a quick check on the time. Yes, there's like an hour and 40 left. They should be here by now. If they were going to turn up, I'd expect it to be the last 2 hours. Maybe they just don't want to be eating pellets today. Don't expect to bite straight away. Sometimes, like when you do feed, like I just have there, they back off that little bit, they come back, and then hopefully you get one, and then you get your little run. So I'll sit here patiently for like 5, 6, 7 minutes. There we go. It's not a big one, but it's a skimmer. Might be bigger than I first thought, actually. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than I thought it was. I might be better off taking the top 4 off for this one. It could be a case where there's just none of them little palm-sized ones here, and that's why I've not caught early, because I caught a lot of them last week. And then the better ones didn't really show till later on, which could just be what's going to happen here. So there's a nice pound. Maybe tidge a bit more, pound and a bit. So I'm not going to feed again because I've just fed enough to hopefully catch me a couple of fish. And then we'll try and work the feeding out. That one was about a foot down my peg, which has probably been similar to what I'm catching on that caster now. The toes slowed up as the wind's dropped as well, so it just means presentation's a little bit easier. You know, you're not trying to hang on for dear life to keep your rig still. So I'll flick that rig out, let it straighten, drop it down onto that bump bar, and feed that short line, because it could just be a lucky fish that. I thought it was a bite. Might just have to take one more shot off that again. My float was just sitting really low. It's making it awkward to see at times. It's hard because you've got like white water, so you fish a black tip, but then the ripple's like black, so it's sort of glistening. This is what I was saying though, like that sort of stamp, that's big compared to last week. It might be a case where, you know, you're fishing for maybe a dozen of them to top your weight up late on. You're not going to be catching them smaller ones. Them smaller ones last week, once they was on the feed, I had bites pretty steady from all day. I probably had like 60 skimmers for £42. hardly any perch, whereas this week's been different. Actually only had 2 skimmers today, but that's a good sign that hopefully there's some mooching about now. Took a lot longer than expected for him to come in the peg, but hopefully not too far away now. We'll start getting a run of them. But if need be, we can always drop back short. I feel like that short line will be consistent. We'll get bites there if need be. Again, I'm not going to sit here just fishing, even though most of my success on this venue has come from fishing like this. If it's not as quick as catching them perch, I'm going to drop back short again. It's pointless trying to force something that doesn't really want to happen. So I'm just going to let my rig just drift a little bit further down. Probably like 18 inches down my peg now from where I fed. Right, I'm just going to have a couple of run-throughs, just take it out of that bump bar and just have a few little run-throughs where just let my pellet go with the toe a little bit. Holding it static there, I only had that one bite. Just see whether I just let it trip through, they'll take it. There we go. Not a big fish at all. Tiny in fact. What is this? It's a leaf. Turned from a fish to a leaf. It's a good bite. I thought it weren't putting up much of a fight, to be fair. Right. Let's have one more go, just let me trip through. Keep loose feeding that short line. Got to remember to keep feeding your lines. Just because you're concentrating on this now. You've got to keep that bait falling through. Some perch can soon disappear, and the roach if there's any there. Any fish for that matter. So I'm just slowly trying to edge this through. You can do this when it's not too windy. If it was windy, you have to fish with that bump bar. Probably a foot down my peg now. It's not great. Let's have a little sit back on the foot bar. It's hard to work out where I need to be fishing it, like my short line. I know it's like foot down my peg, 6 to 12 inch down my peg, 6 to 18 inch down my peg is like my bite zone. At the minute I don't know where my micros are finishing up because I'm not getting enough bites to work it out, but I'm just going to hold it there now. That's probably like a foot down my peg. Let's just keep that still now and just see if we get a bite doing this. If not, I'm going to feed one more time. But you know, even though I've had a pound skimmer, I can't sit here doing this. It's not as quick as catching them perch. Probably could have had over £1 of perch in the time I've spent doing this. Like when them skimmers are in your peg out there, they're actually quite easy to catch. We'll have another feed. If it don't go, we'll drop a little bit more bait in and get back on that perch line, because I just don't feel like this is quick enough. And you know, it would have been lovely to catch on pellets, but I can't sit there biteless waiting for them to arrive. Like I say, there's nobody else really catching on it to make me think like that's what I should be doing as well. You can imagine that if you was getting bite steady, them sort of stamp fish, that's what Meadowlands is all about. Good weights of skimmers with loads of roach and perch and other fishing, don't get me wrong, as you've seen today, loads of perch. But I'd still say it's most famous for its skimmers. That's what most of the people come here for, is the skimmer fishing, because when it's on, it's absolutely fantastic. So last time I fed it probably took 5 minutes to get a bite, so see if we get another bite from this. If we don't, I might just put a little one-handed ball of micros in, and it might be a case where, you know, last 40 minutes we could drop back on it potentially, but then your short line might come good and we might start catching some nice roach as well as some perch. I don't mind just catching them perch, to be honest. It doesn't look like it's fishing mega. It looked like early doors I thought, yeah, it's going to be good today, everybody's getting a few bites straight away. But now it's like it's not really progressed. Normally it's a slow start and it gets better and better. Today, if anything, it seems like it's slowed down for a lot of people, which I've never really seen on here, to be honest. Normally always just improves as the day goes on. Give this a few more minutes, and then if not, I'm going to put a one-handed ball in, drop back short. Obviously I fed some worms just before I come off that short line, so that could actually be good when I go back on it. Could have killed it as well, but hopefully not. Hopefully it's improved it. There's still some perch lingering about, and we can just keep putting them perch in there. It's amazing how you can go out, catch one skimmer, nothing, go back out again, catch one more skimmer, and just like not get a run. So at this point now I'm thinking, I've nothing to lose really. I'm tapping in bits of pellets and it's not going under. If I keep doing it, the same thing might happen, so I might as well attack it and put that little bit more bait in. So I feel like what I'm going to do is just give them like, just literally what pellets I can grab in one hand and just feed that many pellets. Might be sort of like, I don't know, 50 millimicros, because they've clearly not turned up on this yet. And I can't just sit there doing nothing, not catching, when I feel like there's probably some perch to be caught, so let's refeed that long line. If they're that sort of stamp, it could be a late on job. Yeah, let's put that down there, out of the way a sec. So I'm literally just going to get a one-handed ball of micros like that, pop them in, and then drop him back short again. Just have it like 4-6 inch back from where I'm fishing. Drop them in. And hopefully there's still some billies on this short line. So we'll plod on with this short line. And then we're going to go and have another look back out on that. We'll probably, what we got? An hour and 20 minutes to go. Might give it another 40 minutes. Unless this line comes really good. I'd like this to go straight under. Big perch is waiting for us. A little bit of a sign. There we go. Oh, roach. See, if this light starts to drop as well, more of them will probably start to feed, hopefully. I mean, the perch are bigger, so I'd rather catch the perch, to be honest, but anything to sort of keep ticking over. I don't know how we're doing in the match. Like, I can't see everybody. I can see, but I've not really been watching everybody, so I don't know where we're up to, but I feel like we're doing all right. I'm not seeing people's nets going out loads. So I feel like just doing this, if we can get a good run on this till the end, maybe catch some skimmers that last 40 minutes. Even if I drop in on that skimmer line and just catch 6 in the last 40 minutes, you know, that could be another £6, it could be another £9 size of some of them in here. So I'll keep doing this for now, and then when I drop in on that later, we'll have another look. Right, it's 50 minutes to go. Catching quite steady on this short line. We have most at day, to be honest. It's been good for bites. Took about an hour to get going proper, and then we've had a mixture of perch, starting to get an odd roach. I hope that's a better perch. Like when we're getting an odd better one like this, it's just not really worth going out for them skimmers. I'm going to go and have another look just in case. More for my own curiosity really, just to see if they have eventually turned up. Whether it's the right thing to do or not. You know, if it was a big match, probably won't risk it. I feel like probably this is my best line, but you know, I'm going to give it another 10 minutes, nip out on that long line, see if I get one. If I don't, I'll just probably keep putting fish in the net on this short line, because even though you normally need skimmers to win here, I don't feel like that's going to be the case today. I don't feel like a net of skimmers is going to win. I feel like it's going to be roach, perch, odd little skimmers. Unless Grant's caught them on the end peg 26 on up near the point. They've definitely not had a bag full of them down to my right or a couple of pegs to the left that I can see. So we'll just keep sort of plodding on with this. I have had a skimmer on this line about £1, which is a good sign, but I'm still getting an odd perch, more perch than I am. If I'd have had like 2 or 3 skimmers, I'd think about introducing a bit of ground bait and worms. and maybe finish with a little flurry of skimmers near the end. But I've caught one without putting ground bait in. I might still get another one or two plus the perch if I don't put any ground bait in. So I've still got options on this. If it goes a little bit quiet, I could put some ground bait in. But to be honest, it's that time of day now as well. If I start introducing ground bait and I catch a carp, I'll be kicking myself, because at the minute I'm not really, well, I've not hooked one carp all day, which is rare, especially for this area, because you can hook a lot of carp here. Some decent sized perch, probably 5 ounce. I've never actually caught a decent weight of perch. You know, we're not going to have loads today, but it'll definitely be the most perch I've ever caught. I've never really fished a venue with lots of perch. You know, I've had some decent perch, like 4 or 5 in a session, but I've never had lots of small ones like this. I know when they go to Ireland and stuff, you can have 20-30 kilo of them some places. I don't really know anywhere in England that chucks up big perch weights. The Warren Pool, the other lake, which is a bit shallower, I'm sure somebody had like 57 pound of all perch on there once. But the funny fish perch, like, it's the time of year where they're spawning, they could all be shoaled up together getting ready to spawn, and there's a little nest of them here, do you know what I mean? Because I don't think nobody else is catching them in numbers. It must just be in this little deep trough waiting to be ready to spawn or whatever. There's definitely a nest of them here as well, because while I've been fishing, I've had a roach and a little perch, and another perch has struck for them. Well, it's gone for it. At first I thought I'd spooked a carp, but the cameraman behind me told me that it was a perch, and then it happened again later on. Just as I'm going to swing it in, it struck like a pike. So there's definitely some perch knocking about. Not had any massive ones. Pound's probably the biggest. So again, this is just sort of fizzling out a little bit. I might just gamble here and just put a little bit of ground bait and worms in, just to see whether it does bring an odd skimmer in, because like I say, I've had one on it. The perch might not even mind the ground bait. I was just conscious of it last week when I didn't catch any, and the lad to my left, Richie Reynolds, I don't know what he fed, but he caught some chunky perch, and he caught an hybrid. He caught a lot more than I did short early doors anyway, and I thought, I'm not doing that again, putting a load of ground bait in and then they don't come over it. I feel like today I've definitely fished the short line the right way. But maybe now, as it's starting to, you know, thin the perch out, the roach are not feeding. I've had a few more this last half an hour, but they're not feeding brilliantly. It's not like a bite of chuck from a roach. Maybe because there's too many perch there, to be honest. That was a little bit of a quick bite. I hope that weren't a carp, because my peg's just gone a little bit quiet all of a sudden. Yeah, I've had it on here before where you hook no carp all day, and then last 30-40 minutes you rock up and go mad. A little bit of an indication then. There we go. What's this? Maybe another perch, decent perch. Yeah, another nice perch. I haven't got a clue what weight I've got. So I've not really counted my perch. If I was catching skimmers, I probably would have counted them just to have a rough idea of what to do, but only actually had 3 skimmers, well, 2 decent skimmers and 1 small skimmer. I'm going to have one more chuck on this. I just don't know whether 40 minutes left. If I put a ball of ground bait in and it knocks it, might spoil the last little bit of the match. So what I'm going to do is keep loose feeding that. I'm going to have one quick look out long. If they're not there, I'm going to come straight back off it and just fish that short line till the end. More just out of curiosity this. I feel like I should be sitting short and just picking them fish off, but let's just have a look if they've rocked up, because if they have, they could be pound fish and we might be able to catch like 8 or 10 in this last 40 minutes. Like I say, when they're there, they're pretty easy to catch, but you know, more just out of curiosity, to be honest, this, just to see if it will actually go under. Maybe I fished the wrong bait there today. Maybe I should have fished ground bait and dead maggots and some worms, just to see whether I could have caught like perch, roach, anything out there, to be honest. Luckily the short lines been good enough to get us bites. Last week caught absolutely nothing short, caught every single fish long, and this week's the absolute opposite. Just shows how you can't go with like, well, I didn't catch short last week, so I'm just going to sit long, or I'm not going to feed short this week because it was rubbish last week, etc. You just got to fish. As it turned out today, I would say 80% of my weight is going to be perch. If you'd have said that to me this morning, as I said, you're mental. Toe's easing off now as well, which could be a good thing. I don't think it's nothing to do with the toe why I've not caught. Just don't think them skimmers have fed for whatever reason. I do know that when it goes cold, like there will become a point where they just don't want to be eating pellets, and I'm wondering if it's just got to that point now. Normally most of the venues I fish, sometimes you won't think there's a skimmer in there in winter, and then come February starts to warm back through, water temperature's coming up and they start going mad on pellets, and it's absolutely solid with skimmers, which is normally what happens here. Other venues like Hallcroft and Bradshaw's, when it's in the depths of winter, you generally end up fishing like worms, casters, maggots, bloodworm even at some venues, but when you can catch them on pellets, it just makes it so much easier. You catch better stamp fish, you don't have all that ground bait in your peg confusing the fish and backing off it and sitting off it. You just go in, feed a few micros, and your float generally just goes under. It's like the easiest way in the world to catch the skimmers, really. And that's tend to what you find with the best methods are the easiest. You know, it's like when you're fishing for F1s, you can catch them on lots of different things, but generally just loose feeding maggots is the #1 method. Big liner then, that could have been a carp, to be honest. I thought it was a lift bite at first, might have been a lift bite, but looked a little bit more carpy to me, that. It's a sign though, but it's not quick. At this point in the day now, you'd expect that to be going under every chuck, really. Just give it a few more minutes, because I just want to make sure I'm not making a mistake not fishing it, because Like I say, the stamper fish could be big if we get one. It's a noted area for good stamp skimmers and bream, so I'm not just going to give up on it just yet. Yeah, eventually we caught one, but it took a long time to catch that. I don't feel like it's the big stamp we're after either. It's them little ones that we should have been catching steady all day, really. What we'll do, we'll have one more chuck on it, just to see. Caught that like a foot down my peg, so similar to what that short line's been, just slightly down tone, not loads. Let's have one more go on this, and then if it don't go quick, we'll sack it off, because again I would have caught more just fishing for them perch, and there's only sort of 32 minutes left. This needs to be going pretty quick. Like normally when they're there, you'd sit there, it'd be like a minute or two. I'm sure you had a little indication then. Like a minute or two, and then you'd catch a fish. Like it's pretty straightforward and simple when they arrive. Right, I can't sit there doing that. I'm not catching, so time to come back short. Just probably spend my time now fishing short. Just try and put whatever I can in the net. For whatever reason, we've not turned up on that pellet today, which I'm a bit surprised about after how good it was last week. Well, I'm not surprised, but it just shows how two days can be totally different. Maybe the water temperature's dropped to a point now where they just don't want to be eating high protein baits like pellets, and they just want to pick at smaller particles like maggots, casters, etc. Or maybe they're just not here. I want to say they're always here, to be honest, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're just sat further out in the lake and they just haven't come in. So I think it's just a case of catch what we can this last half an hour. Just fishing on this short line. If this dies, then I might just introduce a tiny little bit of ground bait, last 20 minutes or something, but if I'm getting bites, I'm not even going to risk that. I'm just going to keep putting fish in the net rather than trying to be selective. You know, what's the point of feeding ground bait if there's not, you know, I've had one skimmer on this, but if there's not a number of skimmers knocking about, it's pointless. Might as well just keep loose feeding casters and trying to catch the roach and perch. Right, so we're into the last 5 minutes of the match. Been a weird day, do you know what I mean? Like last week, 40 odd pound of skimmers and 2 perch short. This week, caught nothing long. Caught everything short, pretty much. I think I've had 3 skimmers long. Probably fished the wrong bait. Maybe should have fished ground bait and maggots. But to be honest, I still think this would have been the best way to catch a weight of fish, is just get my head down on these perch, because they've been pretty steady throughout the day. Not really had to do a great deal to keep them coming. Topped up with a little bit of neat worm now and again. Just loose feeding casters. Been a pretty simple match, to be honest. But I feel like ground bait, not putting that ground bait in, has probably been key. I'd love to know if I'd have caught the same amount if I put some ground bait in, but I weren't going to gamble doing that. I'm getting a few roach coming off the bottom here now, but it just shows how two separate weeks can be totally different species. Things that worked last week didn't work this week. I'm fishing in a very similar depth to what I fished in last week, and I didn't catch. You know, it's just weird how, there we go, it's just weird how it's been really good short today, and that pellet line has been rubbish. I thought the pellet line was going to be really good when I caught a few perch short early. Normally, like I say, I give up my first hour on this venue waiting for the skimmers to arrive. That's where all my success has been, on this venue. And then today it's just not been right. But I've never been here when it's been, you know, depths of winter, November, December time. I've always come early November and February. So it's a bit of an eye opener for me as well, if I was to come back before February. I don't think I'd gamble fishing pellets, even though it's a great method when they're having it. You know, it's definitely the best method to catch a big weight of skimmers. Maybe they're just going to shut up shop for a little bit now, and it's more roach and perch, and that's what you need to be targeting with an odd skimmer maybe. It was interesting because Dan caught a few skimmers early, further out on the feeder. I'm sat here all day thinking, if I'd have fed ground bait, would I have caught them? Have they not been there, or have I just fished the wrong bait? The thing is, with like 2 hours to go, I was still confident that I was going to catch, so I was never going to swap to ground bait. That's the all out. So we'll get weighed in. Just finished on them perch. Probably had like another 10 perch last 20 minutes or something there. Just keep me ticking over. We'll get weighed in and we'll see what we've had. But we've had a nice day, really good. So we've finished the match and I've had an unbelievable day's fishing. I've had £42, mainly perch. I reckon 90% of that was perch. I've had 2 half decent skimmers, like pounders, a little skimmer, a few little roach, not many roach. Like I reckon there must have been 36 pound of perch there. So by far my biggest weight of perch ever. But again, not many skimmers shown, which probably explains why I've not caught on that pellet line. Like normally that long pellet line, you go out there after an hour, you start catching small skimmers and then they get bigger as the day goes on. Today I've persevered with it and I thought they'll come. 2 hours to go, had a look, hour to go, 40 minutes to go, had a look, nothing. So whether I've made a mistake on that line and I should have fished like ground bait and maggots, but to be honest, unbelievable day's fishing. So we've managed to win the match. Grant Howie on the end peg up there was catching steady all day. He's had a lovely net of roach and a few perch as well. He's had £36 and then there's a few 20s, so it's fished quite well. We've had an amazing day here at Meadowlands and I hope you've enjoyed it, something a little bit different.